No mai hoki mai, welcome back. We are now in our council meeting for the 5th of March. Do apologise that we're starting just slightly late, but just a reminder that we are on live stream and to please have your mobile phones on silent. I'd like to invite Councillor Waru to open up this meeting with a karakia.
Tēnā koe te manukura, o tira kia ingoe tātou. E tau mātou matoi te rangi kia tapu tō ingoa. E tau mai tau rangatiratanga kia mea tia tā koe pai ai ki runga ki te whenua. Peri te anō ki tō te rangi homai kia mātou a iane he taro mō mātou mo tēnei rā. Piro mātou hara me mātou hoki e muru nei o te hungai harana kia mātou. Aua hoki mātou e kawa e kia whakawaia, engari whakaurangi a mātou i te kino. Nau hoki te rangatiratanga te kaha me te kororia ake, āmini.
Mihi nui, Councillor Waru. I do have an apology from Councillor Maxwell, who is at a funeral, and also Councillor Kiriopa, who's unwell today. Are there any other apologies? There appear to be none. Can I please have a mover and a seconder? Thank you. Moved by Councillor O'Brien, seconded by Councillor Wang. All those in favour to accept the apologies, please say aye. Thank you. Any declarations of interest? Any urgent items? There are no... apologies. There is one report today, which is the annual plan consultation topic, the Rotorua Airport proposal. So under section 46A, if the item is to be dealt with at the meeting, then I'm just required to explain why that is. So the reason that this was not on the agenda was due to the finalisation of the proposal, and also the reason it cannot be delayed for a future meeting is just because of the annual plan timeframes. So I will ask for a mover and a seconder for the motion that the report titled Annual Plan Consultation Topic, the Rotorua Airport Proposal, can be dealt with at this meeting in public excluded. That's moved by Councillor O'Brien, seconded by Councillor Kaifong. I'll put that to the vote for now, that it be included. All those in favour, please say aye.
Aye.
Any against? That's carried. Thank you. Any minor matters? No. So we don't have any public forums or notices of motion, so we'll get straight into it. So today's meeting is regarding the Annual Plan 2025-26, Adoption of Consultation Topics. I'll just ask for a mover and a seconder to receive this report. It's moved by Councillor Brown, seconded by Councillor Barker. All those in favour to receive the report, please say aye.
Aye.
That is carried. And we'll now hand over to Thomas and also David, who are going to take us through a PowerPoint presentation. Thank you.
Thank you, Your Worship, and good afternoon, councillors. There we go, presentation. Quick presentation to just, I guess, take us through the last 5 months' worth of work and leading hopefully towards a decision. So the ultimate goal of this is to approve to proceed to consult with the community on a draft annual plan, and in addition to that, some of the items that we'd like some feedback on and consult on. As a friendly reminder, we're talking about year 2 of the long-term plan. We're currently in year 1. The long-term plan was now adopted 9 months ago. Time is proceeding. And in between those long-term plans, we are required to do annual plans. It is hoped that you adopt the year 2 or the year 3, but there are times where you deviate from what was in your long-term plan, and when you deviate in its material, you look to consult with the community on that proposed change. And in this instance, we're trying very hard to align ourselves to year 2, but have highlighted a couple of items that we potentially would like to talk to our community about. The plan itself, overall, and the budgets for year 2, as I said, are strongly aligned to the LTP. The long-term plan itself was strongly aligned to looking after our infrastructure, running an efficient and effective organisation, and in particular had quite a heavy capital investment into our community infrastructure, particularly our wastewater treatment plant upgrades, seismic strengthening of the museum, stormwater to enable housing, and also the addition of completing of the sewerage schemes. Year 2 of the LTP did have us at a proposed increase of 9.8%. And you'll recall for our workshops that we took you through some of the underlying assumptions that changed, some of the things that we've also changed as a result of our organisation and its reset, and looking at our services and identifying opportunities to become more efficient. And as a result of that, and also deferring of FOGO by a year, as a result of that, we went from 9.8 and have landed on a draft number that's 7.95. So almost 2% lower than what we plan to be in the long-term plan. As a result, though, and some of the work that took us there, it has highlighted that there's a couple of things we'd like to have a discussion with our community, and we've drafted up a number of options to consider. I guess the two that we can talk about at this moment is the one alternative funding for the Rotorua sewage schemes. So over the past couple of months in particular, we have had a bit of community feedback and questions from the councillors yourself with regards to the funding of the scheme, how it compares to others, and so forth. And what we have, we'll take you through shortly, is some options to consider for the public to consider, whereby it would move costs away from the residents of Rotorua and move those costs to the wider community. That's probably the meatier consultation topic. The second one is the options around the Rotorua night market. So the night market has been in place for close to 8-10 years in its current location. It was there to help invigorate the CBD at the time, and it's appropriate now to consider what are some alternative options. Should it stay in its current location? Could there be another location near the CBD or around the CBD? But also asking the question of, council has run this for some time. Is there a different model of running this as well? And are these things that the community would be interested in us exploring? And so there's that. In addition to that, we'll talk about a potential airport park proposal. And confidential. And then the last one, local waters done well, is while it's not part of the annual plan, it has no impact on the annual plan per se. The question is arising as to we're required to consult on options for the local waters done well shortly with regards to the DIA wanting to approve 2nd September. And we're indicating at the moment that we'd like to do this with the annual plan, but that's again up to yourselves and the work that we need to do to complete a separate consultation piece around that as well, and we'll have further details on the local waters done well later this month. So happy to pause there and answer any questions that you may have up there. Excellent. So the first one is the Rotorua sewage scheme, and so we have put 3 options together. So the first one is the status quo. So by leaving the status quo, the current funding stays in place, and the residents would pay the costs that we consulted on, subject to if it may change, on part of our LTP. The second option would be moving $1 million worth of those costs to the wider community, and we'd look to use the Lakes Enhancement Rate for that. The Lakes Enhancement Rate is paid for by, I think, 28,000 or 26,000 of our residents, so it does exclude property owners and residents that do not live in the Bay of Plenty Regional Council boundaries within our district, so predominantly excludes parts of Waikiri, Nakuru and Rotorua. And then a third option would be, $4 million. And so what would the rate impact of that be? And so under each of those options, by moving costs away from the direct residents to the wider community, option 2 of moving $1 million would have the impact of increasing the average rate increase for our residents by 0.1. So the 7.95 I discussed before on average would move to 8.05. And if it was to be $4 million, that 7.95 would move to 8.35. and so both those options would be over 25 years. So that's the first consultation topic, and then just showing you there what the impact would be. So by moving $1 million, it moves roughly $1,800 worth of cost away from each of those property owners. That's the lump sum kind of figure cost, and has the impact of moving $22.80 for 27,000 ratepayers across over 25 years. 25 years. No, $2.80. Yeah, sorry, $2.80 for 27,000 residents, ratepayers for 25 years. Yep.
We might just pause there because we'll take questions on each topic if that's okay with you.
Certainly, Your Worship.
Yeah. Just the first question, will it be explained in the consultation document, the total cost, the 25-year cost?
Yes, it will be. So it'll be quite a detailed consultation on the total cost of the scheme. We've also talked about breaking the cost of the scheme up between the main trunk line and the on-site connection. It'll also talk about how we'll utilise the better off funding and the costs that covers, and the inducement of that, using those funds to get people to sign up. And then in addition to that is the wider question of, in particular around the changing of funding, moving the costs away from one set of ratepayers to another that is different from what we consulted on in our long-term plan, and that'll we'll go into those details as well.
Thank you. Councillor Peterson.
Thank you, Worship. Just seeking clarification before I ask my questions. Are we asking questions on the report as well as the presentation now, or do we ask them later?
Just on the presentation, and then we'll open up at the end for any further questions.
Regarding Tarawera?
Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Unless the question is related to the Tarawera scheme, then happy to answer it now. Yep.
Apologies.
I'll try to.
How about we take it topic by topic? So if you have any questions at all about report or presentation on Tarawera, then now's the time. Councillor Peterson.
Thank you, Your Worship. Just in the report, so from page 10 on the agenda, it talks about options for consultation, and it says that the term burden is used when it's describing the situation that the ratepayers will find themselves in if we go for this, that the burden would be on the ratepayer. Is there any reason why we haven't used a word like contribution? That's a very negative word and has negative connotations.
We can look at the use of the word in the consultation document and ensure that it reflects how the council wishes to communicate that message. Yep.
Thank you. And sort of along those veins, down further on, you've got note. Options 2 and 3 would increase the lakes enhancement rate for 25 years. I think that needs to be spelled out in more detail. So, for example, we're talking about the extra $4 million if we went down that path, and what the impact would be per ratepayer. So up here we're talking about $1 million. I think if we're going to do that, we need to do it for all the options so people understand what the impact would be, because it's very hard for a lot of people to just understand that.
That's exactly what we intend to do, Councillor. Yes.
Thank you. And then the last one was, we just talked about the lakes enhancement rate and how that would be charged through that. Is there any, I know we can't dictate what the other crowd are going to do, but it's been publicised that they are planning on reducing their lakes enhancement rate. Can we somehow in our commentary say that while our lakes enhancement rate may be going up, please note Bay of Plenty Regional Council have indicated that theirs will be going down? I'm just trying to see that we put across a description.
Thank you, and through you, Your Worship. Certainly we have heard that, and I believe we're going to hear from the Regional Council next week to discuss that opportunity in public. How we communicate it is absolutely up to, you'll get a chance to look at that before it goes out, but just to be clear, they have made a decision, and now you have to make a decision.
Thank you.
Councillor Brown.
Thank you, Madam Chair. The CEO just said we will get a chance to look at the consultation document before it goes out, because the last year's one was subpar, in my opinion, and could have been, so picking up on what Councillor Patterson's talking about, I think the way this thing is communicated is absolutely key to getting the right result. But we will get to see a draft before it goes to print. Thank you.
Yes, so what we're seeking from you today is effectively approval to continue on, and later this month you will actually approve the release of the consultation document and to go out for consultation. So you will have full view of that document before it goes out.
Just confirming that'll be at the council meeting of the 26th of March. Councillor Brown.
Thank you, Te Manakuta, and through the Chair. Thank you, Thomas. Could I ask, based on my motion last month where we asked about trying to engage with our Lake Strategy Group partners, can I ask the CEO or yourself, Thomas, is how, if possible, can we signal that we may look at a possibility where we may have to contribute to a partnership contribution, but signal that we obviously can't put a dollar figure on that, but until we obviously engage, how would we deal? If regional council and central government said, yep, we'll put in X, you put in Y, blah, 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 are we able to do that this year, or would that have to carry over to next year's annual plan?
It's sort of similar to what we had with Rotorua late in the piece as well. There was a question that was asked as to if more funding was found, how would we apply that? And we'd be consistent with that messaging if council wished, and that if further funding was sought after the rate was set, that we would look to move that to the residents, and so therefore the following year we would reset the capital rate if required. So that's how we would approach that.
Sorry, that would be the same with us if we had to contribute X amount as part of that solution. Again, that would be something we would cover next year?
Yeah, so you are looking at the moment with regards to if you go ahead and set the rate for that scheme for 1 July, then if there was a change, as you say, we would look to amend the targeted rate the following year to reflect that. Those people that have made lump sums, etc., would get their fair share as well, and we would need to do all those workings and calculations. And so that was the undertaking that we gave the Rotorua residents, and unfortunately there was no further funding, so there was no change, but that is something that we can give an undertaking for the Tarawera residents as well.
Excellent. Thank you very much. Thank you.
Councillor Waru.
Tēnā koe Te Manukura. Kia ora kōrua. Just trying to understand the chart better. Shouldn't, well, from my thinking, should the impact there with the $1,800 odd, should that be a negative?
Yes, it's a minus $1,800 impact per resident, which goes against that lump sum that we talked about. That could convert to an annual rate of $700-800 maybe. I'm not too, might be probably less than that, so it would reduce the targeted rate down, but we have stated it as a total property owner impact, and then we're showing the impact to the wider community on a per rate. So I appreciate that we're not consistent in that, and that's because for the Tarawera scheme, we've always talked about the total cost of the scheme per resident, and we haven't made you have a decision yet on the life of that rate, even though we've signalled that it will likely be 25 years.
So, you can correct me if I'm wrong, if that was, I think we're talking about 4 million before, that'll be that number times 4, correct?
That is correct, yes. Yep.
Okay. Also, I'll hold off on that one, thank you.
Yep, we've done it this way, so you can multiply that number by any other number that you want in your mind, and so it should hopefully be simple math. Yep.
Sorry, I will ask then, it's probably the right time now. Around the overall impact on the 7.95 rates
Previous slide.
we're setting.
Yeah.
So a $1 million shift away from the Rotorua residents to the wider community through the lakes enhancement would take the 7.95 to 8.05. So that's a 0.1% increase. And so whatever iteration, but 4 million of that would move 0.4%, and so therefore would move the 7.95 on average to 8.35. And those are the three options we're intending to consult on.
Okay, thank you. Got it.
Councillor Kaifong.
Yeah, I think this just goes back to what we were talking about before about the clarity for the community, because it's not just for the Rotorua ratepayers, it's for the ratepayers in general to understand this. And so I think in the LTP, the general ratepayer has already made a contribution because we increased the subsidy to 2,700. So
That's correct, yep.
So then that's not sort of shown in there, and I know we have had other presentations which I just think it just needs to be more clearly stipulated in terms of the numbers, and I don't think we should say to the public, just go and multiply this by 4. I think they should be shown both from a Rotorua perspective and from a general ratepayer perspective what the impact is, both pluses and minuses.
Yep, that's exactly the level of detail we'll go into in the consultation document.
Yeah.
We've just given you that table for you to, if you want to apply based on where your mind is sitting. But under each of these options, we'll be very clear on the pros and cons, benefits to the Rotorua residents, and then the impact on the wider community as well.
Thanks.
Okay, there appear to be no further questions on the Rotorua Sewage Scheme. Oh, apologies. Councillor Peterson.
Sorry, thank you, Your Worship. Does that figure plus or including GST?
We always ex-GST.
Okay, thank you.
I think just through you, Worship, I think when we communicate to the public, we will make it as easy for them to understand. So we will include the total figure, including GST, but we'll show them both figures.
So the second one is the night market. So we're proposing to go out with four options. The status quo, and as part of that option, we'll explain the cost of that. What's the external revenue coming in, and what's the cost to the ratepayers? We're aware that even under the status quo, there are times because of weather that it doesn't take place. So asking the question, therefore, the second one around actually what's the option of just running it through the summer period, or the spring through to autumn. So as an option, the 6 months, so it cuts out the wetter winter months, and then what will the cost of that be? Moving the night market to an alternative location, so we're not suggesting an alternative location. I guess part of that question will be feedback from the community of where they potentially could see the night market sitting. And then the fourth one is, do you want us to consider looking at an alternative provider to run the night market, and if so, would that reduce the cost back to council? Would council provide a sponsorship, and what could those options kind of look like? So happy to take any questions there.
Thank you. Councillor Kaifong, followed by Councillor Lee.
Yeah, just wondering, I know we're getting into what the consultation document will look like, but I think the two discussions tie together. So I think we need to be really clear that whilst it costs $200,000 to operate, that is a cost to the ratepayer. And one of the things that we were really clear about during the LTP discussions was we draw a baseline, and we said that everything above that line was things we absolutely had to do around things like health and safety, regulatory, contracts, CPI and all that, but anything that was below the baseline. And so we've only chosen this one particular topic around levels of service, but obviously there are more. And so in terms of just the options that are up there, I'm wondering if we would better just to leave it more open-ended around does it have, like, because we've got night market and we're talking about options about moving locations, but we haven't had the discussion, is it actually doing what it was set up to do originally? and also have concerns about us predicating a $80,000 sponsorship. So just some feedback in there because, and we also haven't factored in there the impact on the other retailers that are currently in the CBD where they're having access to car parks and traffic flow for pretty much all of Thursday lunchtime onwards. So I think it needs to be a bit more generic around the other options if we were talking about whether it's moved or seasonal or sponsorship.
I think what we'll do is probably take that on board for feedback and incorporate more detail into the consultation document to be approved at the 26th meeting. Thank you. Councillor Lee, followed by Councillor Wang.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Through you. Just as a suggestion, I wonder if we could, instead of laying out option 1, 2, 3, 4 like that, invite a submission from interested parties as to how they might implement option 4, and that would take us sort of a step ahead of the process a little quicker, and we'd be able to assess whether maybe a Rotary Club or some other organisation wanted to get involved. They could actually give us an indication of what that might look like from their point of view, and we could assess the merits of it.
And thank you, Councillor. That's exactly what we would expect by posing that question. So,
Okay, that didn't quite come through in what I read here, so that's cool.
Thank you. Thank you for that suggestion and good to know that, Thomas. Councillor Wang, followed by Councillor O'Brien.
Thank you, Your Worship, and thank you for the presentation. My question was largely going to be what Deputy Mayor Kai Fong asked, but just following on from that, I guess my only concern is with the 4 options, each, obviously quite different from the other. My concern is that in past experiences, that could result in a pretty split response from the consultation, and that does not necessarily help the decision-making process when we do get to that point. So I'm wondering if it would be more efficient to just put in 3 options instead of 4 to simplify and help it become more understanding for the community when they do read through this. Just a suggestion.
Well, it sounds like we're taking a range of suggestions, and it might be difficult to amalgamate them all together, but we'll see what we can do.
yeah, I think the preference is probably to leave it as 4. I think tying it back to the Deputy Mayor's comments, I think when you do get the feedback back, there will be probably potentially a wider question around is it achieving what it was set out to achieve, etc. Is it part of the wider CBD kind of review and all the rest? So we anticipate probably further discussion as a result of asking these questions as well. So, and hopefully you'll get feedback on this, which will help inform that pathway after that.
Thank you. Councillor O'Brien.
Thank you to Manukura. Could I just ask Thomas, the 80,000, what was the, what's the reasons behind that particular figure, was it?
I'd have to go back to the team and check on that one as to where that arrived at. I don't have that off the top of my head, sorry, Councillor.
Thank you.
And Councillor Waru.
Tēnā koe, me te manukura. So, current cost 200k to operate this for the year. Can I get an idea of what the breakdown of that 200k is? Like, just off the top of your head, I'm not too sure.
What that
incurs, is that manpower, is that staff,
Yeah, it's
traffic?
It's a mix of staff, traffic management, setup costs, and security. We'll recirculate the correspondence from a few months ago to refresh our memories on that. The $200,000 relates to the residual cost of the delivery of that. That kind of falls on the ratepayers. And I guess if you divide that by the number of weeks that it runs, I think it equated to about $1,600 per market. But yep.
Okay, thank you.
And Councillor Brown.
Apologies. Thank you to Manukura, and thank you for your leniency. Thomas, could I just ask, from my reading of the 80,000 in sponsorship, is that in perpetuity, or is it seen as a starting point but over time?
It's probably seen as a starting point, as a discussion to get feedback from interested parties. I think I'll have to go check with the staff as to where they came up from. But if there's a desire to put a lower number in there and seek that feedback, but I think our preference is to pose the question and see what comes out, and any proposals we need to consider on term, funding contribution, all those sort of aspects.
Thank you. And sorry, finally, does that money come from RNZ's money, or is that still the general pool, if I could put it that way?
Yeah, it's ours from memory.
It would be ours.
Yeah, it's ours.
Yeah. Thank you. Thank you to Manukura.
Okay, there appears to be no further question. Do you have no question? Councillor Lee.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I just have a question about another item, so I don't know if you want to finish off this item first, if it's not already.
Yeah, we'll take this item, and then we'll take the airport, and then just general items.
Great, thank you.
Thank you.
So the third one will be local. What has done well, as I said before, is that we're required to consult with our communities, our community on options, and so we're looking at what an in-house option would look like, what a council-owned water organisation would look like, and then what a multi-council-owned water organisation would look like. And so currently every council in New Zealand has either started this consultation or is about to do this consultation, and there's further, I think, workshops and decisions to be made, but just signalling that not needing your feedback on this, and what we need to have a look at is whether this consultation does align time-wise with the annual plan, or whether there should be a separation from it. And I'll just pass over to the Chief Executive to add some comments here.
Thank you, Thomas, and through your worship, there's a couple of points. So we've probably oversimplified it in terms of putting these three options. They're probably three categories of options, and there might be options that are mergers or variations of the different ones that would describe the entire plan for the 10 years. So we will continue that conversation following what was probably quite a detailed workshop yesterday, and I'm aware that there's still a conversation to be had to get some of your feedback from that workshop. The other thing is about the topic we have, about the consultation timeframe. We have typically talked about the consultation for local waters done well at being together with the annual plan, but I'm also conscious that this is a very large strategic conversation with the community, whereas the topics that we're considering in the annual plan are rather more focused on those specific items. And so there is the opportunity, and we need to think about how we do that, about whether the timeframes might start off at the same time, but we might have a longer period of consultation or different ways of consulting with the public on local water done well, keeping in mind that the timeframes for those two decisions are actually decoupled from each other. So your decision on the annual plan, you need to adopt it by the end of June, but the timeframe for local water done well is somewhat different from that. So I just want to make sure that you're aware that it's not absolutely essential that they are started and finished together at the same time.
Thank you very much, Andrew. I think it's certainly worthwhile, given feedback from our community in the past when there's multiple different consultation documents and timeframes, that my personal view is it would be helpful to just do it all at the same time and at least get the community feedback. And if we're able to conclude the local waters done well discussion and decision ahead of time, I think that's only a good thing. But I'll leave that for further discussion. Is there any questions or comments on this? Councillor O'Brien.
Thank you, Your Worship. Sorry, and this is being pedantic, I know, on wording, but could we in the future please refer to the options 2 and 3 and any other that we consider as council-owned organisations? Because I think we need to make it very clear that if option 2 or 3 will become part of it down the track, the separation between council and the the COO operating by itself is going to be, the community is going to have to understand that. That there's going to be a separation of how much control we have on day to day and them taking decisions that they don't need to come back to council to. Even with the helpful advice of, well, you can sack the board. Well, frankly, I don't find that very helpful, but that's what we heard yesterday. So I think that's got to be really clear to the community that if option 2 and 3 go ahead, there's going to be a major separation between their council, the people they vote in, and the operations, potential operations of the particular entity. Thank you.
I take the invitation to be pedantic and say that there is legislation that defines these terms, so I need to just go back and check what exactly that says, and we'll stick to what the terminology is. But I take your point in the explanation. We need to be clear on the mechanics of how they would operate. Thank you.
Councillor Lee, followed by Councillor Brown.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Andrew just articulated what I was about to articulate, that we're bound by the Act in terms of terminology.
Thank you. Councillor Brown.
Hey, Madam Chair. Just wonder in our communication piece that we highlight that this is something central government is asking us to do. This is not something that councillors are making up on the fly.
Thank you. Well, there appear to be no further questions on this one.
So I appreciate you've probably got other questions on other topics. So the timeline ahead of us is, as you can see, what we are seeking from you is approval to go forth and finalise the consultation document on what we've discussed on the previous workshops, which is underpinned by average rate increase of 7.95%, a significant capital works program focusing on the completion of stormwater, wastewater, museum, etc., and looking to consult on the 2 topics of funding of the Tarawera sewage scheme and alternatives for the night market. We will be seeking and providing you with a final consultation document at the council meeting at the end of this month, and seeking your approval to release that to go out for consultation for, I think, a 4-week period, Greg, during April. And subject to the feedback, giving you the options of having hearings and deliberations if you wish, depending on the feedback, with a view of finalising the annual plan with adoption at the end of June within our statutory timeframes. With that, I'm happy to answer any other questions that you may have.
Thank you. Councillor, we'll start with you, and then Councillor Peterson.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I was surprised, as you're aware, I sit on the Waikawa Bay Committee, previously known as Hannah's Bay. I was surprised to learn that somehow or other some $11 million got put into the long-term plan for this committee, and somehow we overlooked consulting on it during the long-term plan consultation process. So that being the case, I was wondering whether that item could be consulted on during this annual plan process.
For your worship, I think we've talked about this a few times, Councillor, that this doesn't fall within year 2. It sits out in future years, and as I've said, we're likely to have another LTP by the time that cost actually lands, and in particular that proposal gets more meat on the bone. So there is no impact of that proposal on what we're asking you to do with regards to adopting an annual plan for year 2.
Just a question on that, if I may, Thomas. The information I was provided at the committee indicates that funding would come available next July, so that'd be 2026, I guess. So are you suggesting then that this should be consulted in the annual?
So, Councillor, if it becomes available the next July, which is July next year, is what you're saying, then
yes,
that would be year 3 and would therefore form part of your year 3 annual plan, not your year 2 annual plan.
How did an item this size manage to get through the long-term plan process?
Councillor, we shared that information with you. We showed you the slides of where it was talked about, and we even time-stamped the YouTube video where I talked about it with councillors during the LTP workshops.
But it was never publicly consulted on, was it?
It was not one of the consultation documents, topics that was consulted on, no, because it was sitting out in further years as well. Yep.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, so for those that are interested, it's a timing process, and this time next year it will be looked at to go on to that next consultation.
All I can reassure councillors is that within the LTP, that project has a substantial sum assigned to it for this organisation to undertake that kind of work as well with outside our financial delegation, and requires a council approval to go ahead with that project. As it is programmed in year 3s and 4s out in the LTP, there is ample time for the organisation to provide you with that detail and seek your approval to proceed with that project, which will likely be, as said, a discussion topic for the incoming council and when they look at year 3 of the LTP.
Thank you. Councillor Patterson.
Thank you, Your Worship. Just picking up on what you mentioned about May and the hearings if required. So isn't that part of the standard process? No, it's not. And so it's something that historically has been done as an organisation. Sometimes we haven't needed to do that either because the feedback is quite clear and it is minimal. And there are other times where we receive a lot of feedback and lower people wanting to hear. And so subject to what falls out of this, what we've indicated is that we've made allowance for it. And it's very likely that one of the topics will generate a lot of interest, so we'll likely therefore need to have them for that, but it's not required, no. Thank you for clarifying.
Thank you. Councillor Kaifong.
Just a question of clarification, because I think if we're moving into confidential after this, so do you want general comments around the annual plan consultation process, or?
Yep, we're taking any general comments now, and then we'll move into public excluded for the airport discussion.
Okay, so I just have a concern, and I know we've still got a decision to make about signing off on these consultation topics, but we're actually only going out to the community with 2 topics. One is Tarawera, and the other is the night market, and depending on what happens later on. But to me, I felt that this is a missed opportunity for the community. We had a particularly difficult LTP process, and I mentioned before that we had kept the rates as low as possible by saying that we were going to focus only on those things that were above the line, so those health and safety, regulatory, contractual, CPI things. And we also had an efficiencies target, so we had that in the first annual plan that we did as a council, which is a $500,000 efficiency target. We were also supposed to have another one, which has now gone back to 0. I know there have been some levels of service changes and some savings, but I wondered if there's an opportunity to directly ask the community about what they feel about the general rates rise of 7.95% and where they see that savings can be made. And I know that we didn't want to go back with individual topic by topic, which created a lot of consternation in the community, but I just don't think the consultation is going wide enough for us to be able to get sufficient information and feedback from the community when we're then having to strike the rate when we make the decision in June later on this year. So I just have a concern that the document is going to be very narrowly focused if we're just concentrating on these 2 topics. There'll be a lot of noise around one of the topics that we're going out to consult on. But I think for the general public, where things currently are with the economy, we've just heard other things that have just gone up in terms of levies for insurance, and I'm not sure that we're doing our community a good service by having such a narrow request for them to provide information, because it looks like we're only asking them to provide feedback on these 2 topics, whereas I think the community should be asked to provide how they feel about the rates in general, and do they feel that there are other opportunities for council to save money, make further efficiencies, to look at what is a core council service, to look at the areas in which we actually are directing council funding towards. So I just make those comments. Whilst I'll support the adoption of the document for consultation, I'm not necessarily happy that we've done a good process to the community in terms of trying to ensure their feedback and keeping rates as low as possible. Thomas?
No, just to reassure you, Deputy Mayor, that first of all, there is a $1 million efficiency saving built into the plan as we talked about, so we do have that underpinning it. But also within the consultation document, there is actually going to be a section on rates, and so while 7.95 is probably in the lower third of the country, we all know that around this room and in our community, a lot of people will have differing views on that, and we anticipate as part of this process that we'll likely get some feedback on that for you to consider.
Thank you. Councillor Brown.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Not sure if this is the place to raise it. We talked about it earlier, the costs associated to the protests at Rotorua. How will that be illustrated? Where will that land? Is that something we will be discussing in this forum or in this paper?
I might try and answer that initially through you, Your Worship. So when we communicate with the wider public and the Tarawera residents around the options that are described in the annual plan, part of that will be an update on where we see the costs lie. The expectation was by the time that document was ready, the works would be complete. Now, circumstances have proved that's not going to be the case, so it is going to be our best estimate of what the cost to complete will be. So the means by which the residents will find out would be, direct communication in advance of the public release of the document, but the public document will have the most up-to-date total costs of the project.
Sorry, I'm not sure that's answering. Are we saying the protests, Rotorua protests, will land on the Tarawera residents, or is there some optionality here?
The options that we've talked about have that falling with the residents, but that is obviously something that will come back through the feedback as to where that options, what other options could be considered. So we anticipate that that'll be part of that feedback. I think because of the timing of this and the work that we've done, it's very hard for us to respond, within a couple of days of trying to anticipate the change from the Environment Court, what the likely costs will be to complete. So we had to draw a line in the sand. That was done on the assumption that the pipe was completed and so forth. And so, as I said, that'll likely be part of the feedback that we receive from the community.
So unfortunately still ongoing. Councillor Barker, followed by Waru and then Patterson.
Thank you, Worship. I just wanted to endorse what Councillor Kaifong spoke about with regards to asking or posing a question for our community to give feedback on how they feel about where the rates sit, that actually invites a conversation about them thinking about what they might like to not do anymore, because that's what we're talking about here, isn't it? Really, if we're going to keep the costs of our rates lower, then the question needs to be posed in a way that the community starts thinking about it in that respect. So I endorse what you're saying. I think that if we can put it across in some way that invites the type of feedback that might get people thinking about it in that way would be helpful. So yeah, thank you. That's all I wanted to add.
Yeah, look, we'll have a think about how we do that. The challenge that we have is, I guess, the process around that of posing that question. We get a group of residents that are very vocal about, please stop this. and then you're deliberating on it, but we actually haven't asked the wider public on their views of that. So what it may mean that, yes, you get that feedback, but because of its materiality, you're required to go out and consult. And so we've got to be very careful of how we ask and pose that question. Yep, but we can take on board.
And Councillor Barker, if I can add to you, Your Worship, the direction I received from councillors was this was at the time 7 months, now 9 months after the adoption of a 10-year plan, and the direction was not to make substantive changes to that. And in line with that, we have taken a 20% reduction in the increase that was projected. As the CFO can speak to, we will be one of the lower councils in the country. We have a number of other councils of similar size that are not consulting at all with their community on a 15% rate rise. And so within the boundaries of what I was asked to do, given that we're not relitigating a 10-year plan, staff have put our best foot forward. What we also haven't done is necessarily highlighted all of the areas of potential improvement or risk that we see, because again, the place for that is the long-term plan, and that was the guidance which we were operating under. So just to provide a reminder of why we're having a narrower conversation.
Thank you. Councillor Waru.
It's the start of my questions. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Patterson.
Thank you, Worship. I too would like to echo Deputy Mayor Kai Fong's comments and also Councillor Barker's, and take it a little bit further from being somebody who's been on the other side of the fence and engaging with this council. And one of our priorities is authentic engagement and actually hearing from our people. It's an opportunity for us to say, hey, what do you think in general? We could have just a simple question with a panel, fill this out, so we get some genuine feedback about what really they are concerned about, because there could be things that we have no idea that we think are minor, which they have a completely different view on. So it could be a good opportunity for us to engage using that same document. And I do understand that while at the moment we've only got 2 topics, we might have 3, and with the local water done well, that's going to be 4, and that's a big one. Because a lot of people won't even know this is coming. They might have seen it in the news, they might have heard little snippets, but don't really understand what it could mean for our community. So it might not be as skinny or unexciting as we think.
Thank you. There appears to be no further... Oh, sorry, Councillor O'Brien.
Thank you, Tim. Your Worship. I echo what the previous speakers have said. I suppose my feeling is when they say, well, let's find out what the public wants, I think we'll all find out in October. That's the crunch for me. They'll either say, yes, you represent me, or no, you don't. So I suppose for me, I'm a little bit concerned that we're sort of pulling, I don't quite understand what the direction we're giving to the staff is. Put out would you like us to cut back more, spend more? I mean, what if they come back and say, actually, we think you're underfunding, spend it more? But what's going to be the reaction to that? So for me, people had their opportunity during the LTP last year. People said, no, this is what we want for the next 10 years. If there's second thoughts now over certain projects, fine, I appreciate that, and it's good that people are always re-examining our spending. We should always be doing that. But this sort of floaty, are we kumbaya, let's hold hands, sing kumbaya crap. No, come on, we gave an endorsement last year. If you've got specifics, come up with them. Otherwise, let's just get this done, and the voters will let us know in October, yay or nay. Thank you.
Thank you. Any further comments? There appear to be none, but I will just also add there are limited topics in this consultation because we went so hard in the long-term plan. And in the previous annual plan, when we looked at every and all opportunity to reduce spend, and we came up with topics such as reducing museum education services, or the turns out to be much loved hanging flower baskets in Ngongotaha, we had very strong community feedback too. So I do support using this opportunity to check in again with our locals, and what I think we should be asking is, what is your priority? Because we can't do it all, but what would you like us to focus on to get right, and what would you like us to focus on if you think there is something that we could change? And that would be a helpful discussion for us to be able to have. And just a final point, I would like to emphasise that it is also costly doing community consultation. So while it's valuable and worthwhile, I'd just like to note that I think we could also be really smart with the cost of advertising for this, and perhaps it doesn't need to be as expensive as it has been in the past, by utilising more opportunities online to advertise the opportunity to provide feedback. But we'll wrap up the discussion there. I will move, and I ask for a seconder, the two items that we've got, which is that Council approved to include the Tarawera sewage scheme in the annual plan 25-26 consultation document with the status quo option as the default option. And also point 3, that Council approved to include the Rotorua night market in the annual plan 25-26 consultation document with the option to change the night market. That's seconded by Councillor Wang. I'll just open up for a round of discussion before I put that to the vote. Is there any further discussion? Councillor O'Brien?
Forgive me, Your Worship, just in response to what Councillor Kaifong said, which was also backed up by Councillor Barker and Councillor Pearson and touched on by yourself. So what's the direction there to the staff to come back with? Sorry.
Thank you, Councillor O'Brien. So I've got there were a number of comments, so I've got some feedback that there needs to be an opportunity for general comments. However, we're not specifically asking on any other topic that has been brought up. So we'll, as Thomas and David mentioned, there's always a general feedback question, and we're going to think about how we outline what, if there are digital tools whereby which we can ask people to rank their priorities, we'll look at what we can do cost effectively, as Her Worship mentioned. But otherwise, the specific topics are what you've adopted. There's always a general option for people to give us their feedback, and we'll encourage people to do that. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. And Councillor Kaifong.
Just a question for clarification in number 3 up there. Given that we were given 3 different options before for the night market, should that not read with options to change the night market in line 2? Not with the option.
Yep, sorry, that is a typo. Put an S there with options.
Yep. Thanks.
Thank you. I will now put that to the vote. All those in favour, please say aye. Any against? That's carried. And so now, thank you for allowing us to include the urgent item annual plan consultation topic Rotorua Airport proposal. To discuss this, we'll need to head into public excluded session. And I'll just let everyone know the reason is to carry out commercial activities. So this is under section 7, 2H. The withholding of the information is necessary to enable council to carry out without prejudice or disadvantage commercial activities. And I will also just add a point in there that Nicole Brewer and also Julie Southall be permitted to attend the confidential session for confidential item 10.1. And the reasons are due to their knowledge and expertise on the subject matter. Thank you. So that's moved by Councillor O'Brien, seconded by Councillor Wadu. And just before I put that to the vote, can I also take this opportunity to acknowledge that at the end of last year, Julie was acknowledged in New Zealand airports as an emerging leader. So we're very proud of you, and that was well-deserved recognition as well. So we've got a great team with you, Nicole, and the others at the Rotorua Airport. So congratulations, Julie. So I'll now put that to the vote to move into public excluded. All those in favour, please say aye. Aye. Thank you. And we'll just give a minute to turn off the live stream.